Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, here's how you can have a cool looking Blade Runner blaster like this for only $45. Now the first thing you need to do is find yourself a Blade Runner blaster that only costs $45. They're around. I know a good one costs $1,000, but I got this one at a trade show for $45, and you can find them on your local auction site, I'm sure. This particular one is only 6 pieces. It's a resin kit. It's got a lot of issues, which we will look at, but it's only $45. Here you can see the thing looks like it's a recast of a recast of a recast. The finish on it is terrible. So many of the details are washed out or non-existent. I'd have to scrape a lot off. I'd have to sand a lot off. I planned on re-drilling holes and putting real hardware in there to make it at least look kind of cool. Everything about this was a mess. It was flat in spots and misshapen in other spots, and I didn't know what to do. I wanted to throw it right out the window. Here I had removed the green laser scope, and I was going to replace it with a modified pen case. And I also got some drill bits so I could start drilling and modifying and reshaping the holes for the hardware I was going to place in there. I used green stuff for a lot of the major patching and model putty for some of it too. The model putty seemed to flake off. I don't know if it was a good choice. I used just a metal file to try to flatten some of that barrel down, layers at a time. Here's the underside where you can see just exactly how many holes. Every time I'd sand a layer off and fill it, sand it again, you'd see just holes and holes and holes. How do you make that look nice? Everywhere was just a bad cast, especially the interior stuff. It was a rough. Now the barrel did have some cool details that just didn't look good, like this PKD logo. And I wound up replacing that with some 10 thou styrene that I cut on the silhouette cutter, and made some new words and stuff for that. Here you can see the start of that. I made a new insert for the barrel because the original was terrible and didn't fit. I got new triggers from Shapeways, and I tried to replace some of the parts that were terrible or that I scraped off because they were just no good. I wasn't interested in being screen accurate. I just wanted to give it some visual interest. I knew that this was going to be a much different gun than the real prop. At first I started replacing some of the thumb screws before I primed, and then I stopped that. I thought, no, I'll replace the screws after I paint, but these thumb screws were already installed, so I left them there. And I had gotten a dip switch from AliExpress, and I used a small hobby chisel to dig away some material and fit that in. Next, we went with a coat of filler primer so we could see what areas still needed to be sanded, be filled, be rearranged, and it started to take shape a little bit and look a little positive. There was still a lot of work to do, but there were some details that I would not be able to just clean up. I'd have to reproduce. I think this is the safety switch, so I redid that with some sheet styrene and some styrene rod. And on the underside of the gun, there was what might have been a logo. It might have been an exhaust port. I don't know, but it was terrible. I wound up making a new pattern in CAD and printing that out on the silhouette, again with some, I think it was 10 thou styrene sheet. I bought a section of 3/8 inch rod, steel rod, and I sliced it up as thin as that handle. And then I embedded it into different areas of the handle so that it would add a little bit of weight to that end. I don't know if it did. And then I took some more styrene rod for that upper left slide. I don't know what that thing is supposed to be, but that had to be cleaned off. So I scraped off all those details and added more rod. I didn't feel confident in scraping away a new serial number. So I printed it in styrene and popped it out and then glued it on top of where I wanted it to be. And then it appeared to be scraped out or chiseled away. Then we began the final filling, hopefully, of a lot of the holes and started drilling the final holes of where the additional hardware would go, since I bought lots more screws and another screw for the sight and some grub screws for different places. There's 2 barrels on this gun, so I drilled out one as deep as I could go, and the other one is sort of like a laser configuration in front. It's got like a little nub, and I put a styrene ring in there, and then we were ready for some black primer, and that was a nice feeling. It started to look like a real model. Here I was playing with some green stuff to see if I could make a little laser nub for the front of the pistol. And here's the other side of the gun with some primer. Some of the pistol has a high gloss finish, so we taped off the parts we needed to finish those. One of the nice things about this kit was the resin grips. They were a decent color. They hardly had any bubbles, but they didn't fit. They were oversized. So I had to sand both sides with a file, very rough sanding, take it down to polish. They weren't very flat, so I had to flatten them out and then polish the bottoms of those. What you see here is a color test that I was trying out for the handle. I didn't want to just paint the handle black and then put these grips on top of it. I wanted the color to really stand out. The final color turned the grips a little more orangish instead of just yellow, which I liked. And then here we go. Let's start putting in the final pieces. At this point, the project started to fall together very quickly. I put the hardware pieces in with 2-part epoxy, and the finish is, I think it's just a graphite powder. It's called Ushi powder, and I just rubbed that on with a cloth and didn't finish it on top in any way, just left it natural. I did get some additional styrene tube to make little holders for the LEDs, which I got from China. The underside turned out okay. I know there's so many flaws in it, but eventually I had to just walk away from some of it. And so now I get to this point, and it feels pretty much like I'm done, like I'm happy. What about those little screws on the back? Some of the blasters have 2 nice little flathead screws. It's not on every model, but it sure looks sharp, and I wanted to get those screws. And there's an additional cost. I only need 2 and I have to buy 100. So now we're done, right? Well, I want to give this as a gift. I can't give it like this. The project isn't over. I have to build a box or a stand or both. I knew that I'd like to have some sort of presentation box similar to some of these. Some are utilitarian, some are more like award gifts, some are just for storage. I wanted something that looked like it was police issue for a special occasion. But I didn't think I had the skills to build a box. I didn't want to pay a lot of money for an existing box that I was just going to rip apart, so I bought a silverware box. This turned out to be an okay idea. The wood was easy to work with. It was easy to rip the box apart and modify it. It was a little too thick, so I wound up cutting it on the table saw. It had a lot of scratches in it, and so I asked my woodworking friend how to repair it and how to, what to finish with. He suggested ebonizing it. So after taking the box apart, I coated it with several layers of India ink. This was very messy, and then I had to sand it because it was real lumpy bumpy afterwards. Then I had to order some split rivets in order to put the box back together. And then I started to think, well, how are we going to do the inside of the box? Blue would look really good, would complement that handle nicely. I had this sort of a satiny bed sheet that I thought I could use for the project. But I thought maybe white would look better, so I ordered some crushed velvet. But after seeing it, I thought that I liked the blue better. I just liked the blue velvet. So then I had to order some blue velvet. But I had to finish the exterior of the box first. So I got some polyurethane and I gave it a few coats. I had also purchased this Steyr logo from overseas. It's actually for a vehicle, but this logo was on the original gun, and I thought it would be nice to tie it in since I had to sand off some of those details from my gun. Unfortunately, I had to order another tool in order to embed this nicely in the lid, so I had to buy a Forstner bit, but I think it came out pretty well. I know the medallion doesn't match the hardware of the case. I'm all right with that. I think the case is beautiful. I think the grain of the wood came out really nice. I think it's a sharp, sharp case. So now for the interior. The box does have a hinge, but it needed a felt hinge to keep it open in its top position. So I needed to get some felt. I positioned the box the way I wanted it, and then I glued it down and let it really dry. I used a product called Fabri-Tac, which is a fabric adhesive. It's acetone based. It smells really strong, but it works great. I used it for the rest of this project to glue velvet to the interior of the box, all the different pieces. Here we're building the it's sort of a seal that goes around the inside of the box. It was on the original box, and I kept the paper and just cleaned it up a little bit, put some felt, new felt on top of it, and then covered it with the velvet. And then when I line the inside of the box and you open and close the lid, it almost has a seal to it, a very soft seal. I had ordered a set of dummy rounds so that I could put some bullets in the box, and I made a case for them out of a drink carrier from a to-go restaurant. Just made a simple fold-over box that folded over on itself, and then I made another one a little larger so that it could be the lid for that box. I positioned the objects where I thought they'd look best, and then I made paper templates so that I could cut the biggest chunks out of foam on the foam cutter, and then I lined them with a different color material that I had plenty of, just so that it would feel a little soft. It wouldn't feel like styrofoam. And then I started covering them with the velvet and the glue. Then I lined the bottom of the box and positioned the pieces, glued them in as necessary. It's funny now that all the other boxes were for right-handed guns, and being a left-hander, I didn't even think about it. I positioned the gun in the left-handed position. So we're done, right? Well, actually, I wanted to order some magnets because I wanted to put them in the lid case, and so you would feel that nice click whenever the lid came together. And then finally there's this, a stand that I made out of scrap wood that holds the pistol in a standing position, and it's notched at the bottom so that if you want to place the stand on the case, you don't scuff up that nice emblem. And then I ordered some fancy Blade Runner custom wrapping paper. And I was able to wrap my gift and give my gift. Hooray! And that is how you can have a Blade Runner blaster for a mere $45 or approximately $45. Thanks for watching.